Welcome to Reread the Fashion Pulpit, a podcast aimed at reintroducing new language around the way we speak about clothes. I'm your host, xingyun, and I use she, her pronouns. In each episode, we explore what it means to be a part of the fashion system and how we can be more intentional in the ways we forge a personal relationship with our clothes. Today, I am in the TFP studio. It is past 7 in the evening, so the shop is empty and it is very peacefully quiet here. I'm wearing a beige colored Kala cotton top from Sui. Sui is a slow fashion brand based in Singapore and in India. And this is probably one of the most comfortable top that I own. It doesn't even feel like I'm wearing anything. All right, we've got a lot to cover in this episode, so let's just jump straight into it. This episode is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a really long time. And the conception of this episode came from reading a Kate Fletcher book called The Craft of Use. It's essentially a collection of love letters, a pictorial archive, and a physical guide of the clothes we love to keep and repeatedly wear. I first read it when I was working on my final year thesis in 2019 and have since reread it multiple times. Many of the individuals that Fletcher features in her book speaks about owning their clothing for a long time due to sentimental reasons and somatic connections to loved memories, locations, or people. I highly recommend checking it out and reading it despite it being published in 2015. The concepts and ideologies mentioned in the book are still relevant today. I'm also happy to loan my copy out, so hit me up if you would like to borrow it. So, as I was doing research for this episode, I thought about my habits when it comes to the clothing that I choose to wear repeatedly and the ones that I choose to not. And I realized that I follow a repeated pattern of seasons. In my mind, I visualize and see my life in different phases of time. And I notice that my dressing choices come and go with them. I don't mean seasons in its literal form, though living in Singapore, the erratic change of weather and dressing for extreme heat and humidity definitely play a big part in how we dress ourselves. But in my case, seasons refer to time periods ambiguously and indefinitely shaped by people, places, and memories of my experiences. I find myself reaching out for pieces repeatedly during a period of time for various reasons. They help me feel beautiful, confident, and well, I guess, safe and loved and seen. And that would stop after that particular season is over. And I think about getting rid of the clothing that I hadn't reached out for in a while, but I remind myself that they will cycle back into my life as I again re experience similar but not identical seasons of my life. I'm pretty sure of that because it's happened before. So, circling back to how we can be better wearers and carers of our clothing, our affinity for our clothing and fashion in general is incredibly personal. The relationship that I have with my clothes and the way I perceive myself in them may not be the same as how you perceive yours. Garments are kept and worn repeatedly for a myriad of reasons. In The Craft of Use, Fletcher states that the enduring use of clothing is difficult to predict. This is because it is specific and dependent on each individual wearer. It is linked less with materials and more with ways of thinking, experiences, and memories. But sometimes this thought process is meddled with trends, newness, and the pursuit for novelty. Enabled by the constant bombardment of advertisements to tempt us into buying more than we need, the industry also thrives and profits off planned obsolescence. So, planned obsolescence is a phrase used to describe products that are intentionally designed to wear out so that we can buy new items to replace the old ones. For instance, Apple creates iPhones that last no longer than a specific period of time, so we would need to buy a new one to replace the old one. Fast fashion companies also operate on the same principle, creating garments that are not made to last or withstand repeated wear, wash, and use to maximize its profits and interests. It doesn't help that most of the words we associate with fashion are words like new, trendy, and halls. One of my favorite fashion writers, Charlie Porter, writes that fashion writing often compensates a lack of personal knowledge about the garment itself by resorting to cliche phrases like must have, cult item, and to die for. In his words, fashion items are subjected to open and close inverted commas, hyperventilating language. The way we speak about clothing presently completely misses the point about repeated and ongoing use. The link to this article is also included in the show notes below, so please check it out if you're interested. It could be possible that we've yet to develop a language for loved, worn, and old clothing. I don't think we pay enough attention and awareness to how garments behave over time and change with increasing use, which is bound to happen if we plan on keeping them for a long time. Myself included, this is definitely me calling myself out for not being a better wearer for my clothes. I feel quite a bit of sadness when I think about growing up and older with my clothes, literally, mentally, and emotionally. This might be me being overly sentimental about time slipping through my fingers, or it could be, something that I have yet to explore, dig deeper. But I want to know how I can be a better wearer of my clothing and how I can adopt better wear and care behavior so that my garments can last a super long life and remain in the cycle of use. Also, what if the inevitable happens that we grow out of love for or fall out of love for the clothing that we used to love? I think there is a missing puzzle to the overall fixing of the system that is urgently required right now, and that is the intent and act of mending. As we mend worn out clothes that have grown older, we attempt to mend and fix our relationship with clothes and the fashion industry. I would like to also believe that this indirectly fixes the broken system that we have in the fashion industry, and this is done through a very small but significant act. Here's a recording of an interview I did earlier this month with Daniella. She's a lecturer and researcher of fashion studies at LaSalle College of the Arts. We explored the notion and nuance of repair through the work that she's done, and also we looked at mending and fixing in the current state of the world, where replacing is easier than repairing.
Yes. Okay. So, welcome, Daniela, to Rewear at the Fashion Pulpit. It's really a pleasure to have you with us today. Can you please tell us a bit more about what you do, who you are, what you're wearing, and where you're at the moment?
Hi, good morning. It's nice to be here. My name is Daniella, and I go by she, her pronouns. And I am a fashion researcher and curator based in Singapore. I am a lecturer at LaSalle College of the Arts. And right now, I'm wearing a linen shirt that I made over the lockdown last year.
Oh,
So it was one of my lockdown projects. And I made it using this like paper patterns from a Japanese magazine. So I had to use Google Translate to kind of translate some of the instructions, but it was quite a nice project.
That's so cool.
It was a good way to spend a lot of time. And I'm at home in my study working from where I work from home.
So, according to the research that you've done prior to this, like, how do we physically and I guess also emotionally deal with this inevitable wear and tear when it comes to our clothing?
Yeah, so there are many ways that we have dealt with wear and tear over the past. I mean, in the 18th, 19th centuries, in different cultures, there are different aesthetic traditions towards like mending and repair. There's like the very high end way of repairing, like kintsugi for ceramics, where they fill up broken ceramics with gold. And for clothes, there are the equivalent of, well, not really, because it's a different social class. So there's boro mending in Japan. So it's just the idea of mending and repairing always came from an idea that you wanted that materials were precious. And I think in my research, what I found, this was a project I did during my MA when I was looking at the idea of like post-growth fashion and like care of garments and what kind of aesthetics that lives behind on the clothes. So it just it's only in the 20th century, like around the 1980s, when we started having the kind of like mass production of clothes that we intentionally made our clothes look worn out, like with distressed jeans and like acid washing. So before that, wear and tear was just something that you kind of tried to fix as invisibly as possible to kind of look respectable, to look like you were well put together, that you cared about about how you looked, basically. Like I have a couple of things from my mom and from my auntie that they wore in the 70s, and surprisingly the colors and the way that they kind of survived haven't needed much mending. And I recently tried to like gather things from friends to kind of do a small mending experiment. And what I found is that actually we don't wear our clothes so much that they actually really do need mending. I haven't actually seen many people really mending their garments. There has been like an overall movement towards visible mending. There have been quite a lot of books about it, where instead of like hiding the hair and like fixing it with like the same color thread, for example, they will purposely do it like in contrasting colors. And so it's this whole movement called called visible mending. So it's to kind of highlight and like show that actually garments that have mending have like a personality of their own.
Yeah, and I guess it's also like taking a stand against like this constant need to buy something new to replace like a piece of clothing with like a big hole or something, right? It's like showing people that I'm choosing to keep it, and I'm choosing to continue wearing it, right? So
I think there are two other things that make garments wear out that are a bit harder to work with. Like one of them is the change of color. If they are naturally colored, many like what people used to do in the past is they would like re-dye them. So indigo was always a popular dye because it absorbs very well. And the other thing is like piling, like when there's like little balls and then materials like kind of wearing out. So those are the ones that like are a bit harder to mend, but they are possible.
I mean, I guess unless if it happens to like a small patch, I guess you could cover it up. But if it's like if it happens to the entire piece of clothing, which I feel like I've seen a lot in my old like cotton t-shirts from school. Like I'm not sure if you also noticed that, but like when I was packing my wardrobe the other day, I would notice that like a lot of these these balls would start forming on the surface of a lot of my old class t-shirts, for example. And I'm just not really sure how to go about. I mean, I don't mind it, but yes, I see what you mean when you say that it's harder to mend that aspect of wearing it out, or it's just something that happens over time, I guess, naturally. Do you think then it comes down to the durability of the materials that we use in our clothes, because everything is made out of synthetics, and I mean, not that is not as durable as natural materials, but do you think there is also that is also part of the reason why our clothing wear out a bit faster?
That's actually a very interesting hypothesis that many like sustainability scholars think about, whether having better materials and more durable materials and better construction to help in the longevity of clothing. And the answer is very strangely yes and no, because a lot of utility garments, of course, are made to be worn like excessively and to like very extreme conditions. And I mean, soldiers used to mend their clothes and socks as well. But there is, and people have found that like even fast fashion garments, if somebody decides that they want that garment to last, they can a lot of things to kind of
Yeah.
extend their wear, even if the material actually polyester is super hardy as it
Yeah,
doesn't
it is. It is.
decompose.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it but I guess it's more of the main thing I think that kind of makes a garment look worn also comes down sometimes to the style of it, or the just how
Right.
like
Right.
how strange it looks in this time period, and you can date it. For example,
Right.
I do agree that a lot of things from I had I had things from like Primark and things before, and the t-shirts really don't last as long, and the jersey just kind of goes like in strange directions. So there is something to the way that things are made differently that can can does mean that they last longer. For example, many coats in the past were made by hand, and the stitches are much tighter. They are like smaller. They might not be as even, but they did last and were made to last quite a long time.
Right. You also did a project called Invisible Mending. That was your
Mm,
MA project, right? You created like a
yes.
hypothetical exhibition. Yeah, can you tell us a bit
Yeah.
more about that? And also, I was reading your like the description of the project, and there was this one line that really stood out to me, and it says hand mending is parallel to a person's handwriting, leaving behind signatures and marks on a garment. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, can you share a bit more about um, where you sort of like derived this from?
Yeah. So when I was doing my MA, I started just having this lens of looking at anything that had mending or repair. So everywhere I went
Right.
to every exhibition, I will try to look for garments that had a bit of mending or repair on them. So like I went to the Palais Galliera, I went to all these archives, and I started becoming very good at trying to kind of foresee where the men would be. So like where
Right.
seams cross, for example, like under the
Right.
armpit or like the trousers. So when I was working in the Westminster Menswear Archive, that's how I started to look for the where they could possibly be. So what I found, especially with this specific silk slip and like silk stockings that I found in the London College of Fashion archives, was that the stitching, the hand mending that the Mrs. Burdekin, the donor did,
The owner.
really had, yeah, the owner had, it had a lot of personality, and all the different stitches, if you really, all the different mends, if you really looked at them, they they were a kind of signature, because stitching is so much like handwriting. Um, Many people train to be like perfect stitches to look very uniform, but for some reason for mending, people are a bit more forgiving. They don't really need to be as perfect as when they're doing embroidery. So it tends to be a bit like ad hoc improvisation.
Right.
And so that's one of the things I found, and I got really obsessed by it. And another thing that really kind of made me think a lot about mending and repair was this book by a philosopher called Elizabeth V. Spellman, and she has this book called Repair: The Impulse to Restore in a Fragile World, and she just talks about
Okay.
fixing in general. So I thought
Right.
it was kind of beautiful, because mending and repair, it's the reason why people do that is because they care, right? So it's like a very tangible way of showing care for something that and that's like a very empathetic impulse to have, that yeah, that humans have. So for the MA, we had to do an installation, and I did this like video of one of my of a pair of jeans I had for 8 years, and it was with me in London as well. So I kind of got this like
Right.
microscopic cameras, and I looked at the fibers and looked at the parts that were worn out, as well as like the mends that I had done to the pair of jeans.
If say you didn't do any of these like reinforcement onto the pair of jeans, how would it have turned out? Do you think you would still continue to wear them?
I think some of the holes were getting kind of away from respectability, so I had to start mending them. Some were a bit more, as in like there was one that was like on the knee, which is fine, right? It's kind of like that torn jeans look, but it wasn't very good for winter, so I did try to mend all those things. And also I guess it was kind of like a result also of like all this research I was doing. I also went, like I took a train to Brighton to do a workshop with Tom of Holland, who's this invisible mender, and he just showed all this like beautiful like samplers of like how people mended, and I was just very inspired to try some of these mending techniques.
Right. So would you say are you a fan of invisible mending or visible mending? Like if you had to pick, or can you not decide?
I think the invisible in the title for my research was more about the idea of like the invisibility of caring for garments, like even things like laundry or
it's like subconscious actions almost. It's things we do not realize that we do, like, that actually contribute to the caring.
Exactly. And also just things that have not really been, like when you read about fashion history or you read about somebody's wardrobe in an exhibition, it's a very small thing that doesn't really get mentioned. I mean, since I did this MA, obviously there's been exhibitions, for example at FIT about repair in fashion, and even in the design center there was an exhibition about repair. So I think it has entered like our consciousness, this idea of like looking at a very simple intervention that can maybe be an answer to some of this obsoleteness that we're facing with our objects.
Yeah, and when you mentioned that repair is a form of intervention, I think it is also very anti-new. You show that you are not gonna either discard it and then just replace it with something new, or it definitely is a very, I think in my own words, a very charismatic way to wear your clothes, because it's like it's got filled with personality, and and also I think you sort of like leave your own mark on the clothes that you wear. And I guess it's also a way of actively participating in the system, in like the clothes that you wear, because you might not make them from scratch. You might not be making them hand sewing them together, but you can like sort of like add your own flair and your own personal touch to the clothes that you wear. Or even sending them to a tailor is also a part of this like whole, it's under this whole umbrella, right, of
system.
That's really cool.
I agree. Like they've also done a few as in like if you look at a pair of jeans from 5 different people, you would see wear and tear in different parts. So it is a very personal way of like your clothes, the way that they wear and tear react to your lifestyle, your gestures, how your body moves. And so the mending of those wear and tear would also be like kind of like your quirks in some way.
True. Yeah, and it's one of a kind, right? You really wouldn't find someone else with like a hole in the exact same position as you, for example. Have you ever looked at, say, any particular item of clothing and go like, oh, I feel so sad? Okay, maybe sad's not the word, but like you feel something towards like it becoming a bit older, or like, you know, you're no longer able to wear it because of reasons. Like, do you ever have an experience similar to this?
Yeah, actually, I told you earlier I was like gathering clothes to mend for a
Yeah.
small project. And actually, one of the clothes that I gathered was this dress that I really loved. I had gotten it, I think, 10 years ago in a thrift shop in Orchard Towers. There used to be a thrift shop everywhere in Orchard. And
Okay.
it's this like kind of a shift, like it's kind of it has a lining, but it's in this like very thin. It could be silk, but it could be polyester, like chiffon or organza, and it's got like embroidery all over it. And it has some mends that I could possibly fix, but the main problem is just that I'm not the same size that I was 10 years ago, and I think that physical change is something that is very hard to. That's one
Right.
thing that I can't undo.
Mm.
Apart from that, I don't think. Yeah, I mean there are after many decades there are bound to be like silks that shatter and are very difficult to fix. For example, so there will be some clothes that will leave us that won't almost unsalvageable after a while.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and maybe that makes them even more compelling.
Right. If I can't wear it, I'll keep it forever.
Yeah.
So earlier, Dani spoke about her interpretation of mending and repairing and fixing clothing and fashion from a point of view as a academic and a researcher. I thought I would bring on the next guest, Erliana from Crafted Goods. I got to know Nana when I attended a denim mending workshop held by Crafted Goods with a couple of other Fashion Revolution volunteers earlier in April this year. Yeah. And I mended a pair, and I mended a worn out and, to be honest, neglected pair of Zara jeans that was passed on to me from a friend who no longer wore it either. I patched two large holes on the pair of jeans because they were just ripping apart slightly too wildly. And the holes were like, getting too large. And I wanted to add my own flair to it. So to be honest, I wear them a bit more often now, though not as much as I would like. But this is due to its original fit. It's a skinny fit, which I tend to not sort of wear more nowadays. But I'm sure, when the time is right, it will definitely cycle back into my wear routine. And I'm definitely glad that it's the only pair of jeans in the world that looks like this and has my messy mending strokes. I sort of bringing Nana into this episode because I want to know how it's like to transition from mending being a part of your life, maybe just something you practice as a hobby or, out of necessity, into something that has sort of become a business in the last 9 years. To start with, can you please tell us a bit more about yourself and also where you are and what you're wearing today?
Sure. My name is Elena. I'm from Crafted Goods. First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you.
I hope whatever that I share today is of some use to the listeners. Okay, I'm in the workshop, Fin workshop at the moment.
Yes.
So if you see behind me, that is. Are you okay with me moving the camera around?
Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
nothing wrong
So
with it.
behind me is actually Fami's messy table. Well, there's this wall of inspiration, and then Fami is actually right here. Ta-da!
Hello.
Hi. He's mending. He's doing some work on the denim too. And and that's the rest of the workshop.
Yeah.
What I'm wearing is actually a secondhand shirt that I bought from Tokyo. It's actually a pinstripe shirt with a zip at the back. It's got a longer back also.
Okay.
So I like this piece. So you can dress formal or you can go casual with it depending on the bottom that you're wearing. So this is one of my favorite pieces as well.
I'm glad you wore it today.
Yeah, of course. I think 3/4 of my wardrobe is secondhand pieces.
Yeah, I guess that's the way to go, right? I mean, there's just too much clothes. Like it's
Yeah,
not even.
no.
Yeah.
Fin is a company started by Fahmi, my husband, in 2012. What he started the businesses with is to make aprons and bags. But we started a business doing aprons first because in 2012 there was a bit of a boom in the cafe industry and restaurants.
Right.
Yeah, so the staff or the chefs, the baristas wanted to have a proper uniform, and then so they approached Fahmi to make aprons, customized aprons for them.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the process, in the span of the how many years have we been? 9 years. I think after 2 years we started to realize that there's a lot of wastage that goes into making aprons or making things out of fabric. And then started there began our journey into mending clothes for people, for customers. And specifically what we meant is jeans, denim jeans.
Yeah.
Why? Because denim jeans are very often used. It's supposed to last you very long and is the most labor intensive or resource intensive in terms of clothes making. So yeah, and that's those are the two core things that we do in Fin. And then as we went along, people started getting interested in the art of mending, and so we started doing workshops, teaching people how to mend their own clothes.
What have you noticed about, I guess, the practice of wear and the process of wear and tear through either interacting with your clients or through your own sort of mending and repairing work?
So what we have noticed about the wear and tear in the jeans that we wear, especially for men, for example, some of them work on site. So they wear it they get oil marks. Some of them are in shipping or oil industries. So or some of them ride bikes. So they get into accidents sometimes, and they get tears on the jeans, and some of the tears are quite severe. And interestingly, because of those very incidents that happen to them, or the life experiences, or the way they wear their clothes for work or for dating, for example, they go on dates and they sat somewhere, they fell. The very reason that they get those tears on their jeans or on their clothes is the reason why they want to save it. So there's a sentimental value to it. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting. So, what is like the main clientele that you get? Is it men?
Actually, yes, predominantly men. I would say about 70-80% are men, and there are some women that have started coming to us too, with their more feminine clothes like shorts, linen shorts that do get shirts that do get tears or some stains in them. Because sometimes like for myself, I tend to eat mee rebus or mee siam and I get stains on my shirt and it doesn't go away. So we kind of like just either do an indigo dye or we put a patch over it. That makes it look it's still wearable, but it's not like, oh my god, you have a dirty shirt and you're still wearing it. Yeah.
So you've been in the business for about 9 years now, and do you see is there a shift in, I guess, the mindset towards mending? Like, was there more resistance in the past, or is there more resistance now? Like, is there a change in the way we perceive mending as a form of service for our clothing? Just like bringing it to the dry cleaners, right? But you're just bringing it to a different place, to different people with different expertise.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say that it's a resistance, but more of an acceptance of, this is actually an alternative, as opposed to throwing away my clothes or donating it to someone. And they're more ready to, pay for a service that they themselves can or don't have the time for or don't have the expertise in doing so. Yeah, so there are some who bring in the clothes that they try to mend themselves, but it's not quite there. So they bring it to us and say, "I think I leave it to you to do it for me." Yeah.
Is it possible to walk us through some processes of mending and repairing that you do at Fin?
So, for example, I have this pair of jeans, denim jeans. So as you can see, the denim has gotten quite worn out.
Yeah.
And the way to see it is that it feels very thin.
Yeah.
And you can, if you put your finger or your hand through, you can almost see your hands through the fabric.
Yeah.
So what we do is we'll cut a piece of denim.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see here. Another piece of denim.
Another piece of denim. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
usually a piece of scrap or
Right.
denim that we were donated to us or just
Right.
lying about somewhere.
Right.
And then we pin it to the underside of this pair of jeans. Okay. So what happens is after you pin it, we stitch through the two pieces of denim. So what that
Right.
does is it reinforces the fabric at the part where it's most exposed to wear and tear.
So
yeah.
earlier you mentioned that you can sort of tell that it's worn out because of because it becomes very thin. So what do you think happens? Like, what is the process of wear that sort of causes denim to become thinner?
So for this person, it's probably it's the sometimes for Fahmi, whenever he sweats, he does this and then he wipes it on his jeans, and that kind of creates the patina. Or sometimes there's a certain action that you do. So for example, we had a client where they make aprons for their restaurants, and the baristas were standing behind the bar top. And what happens is that when they move along the bar, they somehow rub the front of the aprons against the table, and that particular part gets worn out. So it's usually a contact between your body and the whatever that is coming in contact with, and that causes the wear and tear. Or for example, the bottom of your jeans, right, the seat of it. If you're sitting on the motorbike, or you constantly rubbing against something, I'm not so sure, that causes the wear and tear.
Friction.
Yes, friction.
Right. When I was there earlier this year, I think in April, in the studio, you walked us through different techniques when it comes to mending denim. Is it possible to also show us that and also walk us through those processes?
Sure. Okay. So the other way is when you have a clear hole in your
that's the one I did,
right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that it gets frayed, or there's a clear tear in it. So what happens is that you put the denim underneath, just like you did with the part that is weak, and then you pin around it. Okay, and then you fold the parts that are frayed here, and then you fold it in, and then you stitch around it like this. So this is what we call a whip stitch. So you kind of tuck the frayed part inside, and then you sew it inwards, and that kind of on top of that you have stitches down the whole area, so that it reinforces the denim in case after you wear it again, it gets worn again, so that prevents it from tearing even further.
Do you have a favorite piece of mended item in your wardrobe that you wear quite often, or even if you do not wear it and you keep it, it's something that is quite close to your heart?
I do actually. So so I a lot of my jeans are actually from Fahmi because some of the jeans doesn't fit, and I like to wear worn in jeans. So in terms of jeans, I haven't really repaired anything, but I have this old blouse. It's like a rainbow just threw up, and it's very it's just really colorful. But the more important thing is that this shirt I got from so I think about 6-7 years ago I started buying secondhand clothes mostly, and where I do it is I bought it I do a lot of my shopping in Thailand, because we go to Thailand and Japan for buying materials and just basically getting inspiration. So this shirt was gotten from Chatusha, if you're familiar with it. And they have a lot of very good what do you call that, secondhand shops, vintage selling vintage clothes, and they're really musty, and it's a really musky place, and you kind of go in feeling a bit like I'm not so sure if I'm gonna get, but actually there are a lot of good pieces in there, and this is one of those. And what I noticed about this piece is that it has a little bit of mended part on it. So this black part, you wouldn't be able to see it actually. So it's actually sewn by the previous wearer.
Right. Okay. I thought that was part of it.
I know, me
too.
too.
The black part is part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is very special to me because it resonates with you. Like, it's exactly what we do. And I actually found a piece that was actually mended by the previous wearer. So that's special. So yeah, in that sense, it's not special, it's not new to be mending clothes. It's just we still happen to be doing it as a business, but people have been mending their own clothes for a long time. We just don't know about it or don't see it.
What's your favorite thing about mending? Because you do it quite often, right? Like almost every day.
The favorite part of it is where we finish it and we pass it to the owner actually, because some of it actually get quite teary. It's quite moving lah. They're like, oh my god, you salvaged my old piece of denim skirt. Recently, actually last Saturday, someone just picked it up and she just gave me a big hug and she's like, thank you for saving my denim skirt. So that was really, that's our favorite part when the owner or the wearer comes back, receive their piece of clothing and it's wearable again. So you know that piece really means something to them, and knowing that it means something to them means a lot to us too. Because our effort did not go wasted lah.
And I guess for people who are new to mending, clothing wearers who want to maybe salvage their own sort of worn out items, but do not but want to do it themselves, what is your advice, or like what would you say to them? Like, are there any tips that they should or they should just come to you?
That
just
too.
go to Finn. Just go to Finn.
If you don't want to come here, you can also search on YouTube. There's a lot of videos teaching you how to mend your jeans. But come to us, you have a chat with us, and then we'll share a little bit more about how best to repair your clothes lah. So I mean, I think you got to remove that stigma of feeling embarrassed about wearing mended clothes.
Yeah. I was speaking to Daniella from LaSalle, and she spoke about visible mending and versus invisible mending. And I guess the work that you do at Finn is visible mending, right? Like it's very obviously mended, and you can tell, and you wear it very loudly and proudly. I guess my question would be, has your relationship with the technique or has your relationship with the activity that is mending changed over the years since you first started doing this?
For sure. I think our relationship, our understanding in mending clothes have evolved and hopefully I think improved. So we kind of when we fixing a particular weak spot or a hole, we try to understand a little bit more about the person who's wearing it too. So when we receive the item, you ask them, how did you get this hole, or how do you wear it, or what do you wear it with? So some wearers or some clothing owners are a little bit more conservative. So they say, oh, just keep it blue or go crazy. So I think it becomes a little bit more personal and personalized.
I'm sure the people that come to you with their worn out pieces, they still really love this particular piece of clothing item, which is why they want to invest in having someone mend it for them professionally. But what about items that have no more love? Like, what would you advise people? Like, what would you do, if you have an item that you have like fallen out of love with, or you no longer resonate with? Does mending help in that sense? Does it?
In mending in the sense where we're not mending a hole or repairing it, but more of we are reviving it. Or giving new life to it. So for example, if you have a old piece of t-shirt, it's plain, you're just bored of it, it's just boring, it doesn't interest you anymore. What you can do is, for example, what we do is we create a little pocket. This is just an example lah. So we create a little pocket. This is actually the base of a coin pouch, but let's imagine this is a pocket. You sew it onto the t-shirt and it becomes a new piece of item that has a new pocket in it, and it becomes something interesting. Or what we have also done is where the piece of fabric doesn't interest you in wearing it, but it has some sentimental value. So we've had a client whose father passed away. And he had a lot of Hawaiian shirts, and they didn't want to throw it away or give it away, so they give it to us, and we repurpose them, make them into coin pouches or sling bags, and then they redistributed it to all the family members. So yeah, so you have a little piece of your father, memories of him, but not necessarily wearing the shirt
You're
that
not
he used to wear.
right, right. Yeah. Oh,
It
that's
was
really nice.
that was a very special project for us. Yeah.
Have you worked on any projects with, I guess, either with clients or with brands that have, created a lasting impression of on you?
Since you are asking, at the moment we are working with Uniqlo. So Uniqlo is doing, yes, they did a denim drive where they got a handful of customers to donate their used denim that they don't want to wear anymore.
Right.
Give it to us, and then we make either coin pouches or sling bags for them. So this is actually something that we're currently working on. So they donated their old pieces of denim. Let me show you. So let's say this one, right? It's an old piece of denim. So we cut them up. This is just a piece that we cut up, and then we make a patchwork out of it. So we combine their piece of denim with some other scraps. So it's not just one plain old boring piece of denim.
Yeah,
it becomes a patchwork, and then and then we sew it into a coin pouch.
Right.
So it becomes very cool and has a new purpose. So this is with Uniqlo.
So you sort of like mix up the colors and the textures and the materials, into.
And then we do a little bit of stitching on it to create some patterns and prints. Yeah, so that's currently our favorite.
It's really cool, and I am glad that large companies like Uniqlo are reaching out and working with Fin Crafted Goods, because you guys deserve it.
Oh, thank you. I guess our last message, let's say, to listeners is that try not to throw away your clothes, because we are just consuming too much. And the clothes that you throw away have to go somewhere, and usually lands in some landfill where it just stays there and not decompose into something that can bring benefit to the earth again. It's usually something that causes more harm than good. So I guess as much as we want to say like buy less, buy better, it's quite hard to practice it. It's easy to say. So maybe just practice a little restraint, and before you throw away your clothes, just think about or before you buy new clothes, think about whether do you really need it. Before you throw it out, think about whether do I really need to throw it away? Can I give it to someone? I think donating it is a little too easy when you donate it to charity. Sometimes they also don't know what to do with it. So mend it, do something with it, or come to us and have a chat with us. And we'll think of something.
Yeah. Do you reject any pieces that your clients bring in to want to mend, but you just either you're unable to, or it's not it's beyond salvageable? Have there been cases like this?
Yes, for sure. Usually when it is not we have rejected things such as maybe leather or some other not natural fabric like bags. So if we feel that we can't do a good job at it, and then we can't salvage it, then we reject it. But as much as possible, we do take in and try and see what we can do with it.
There are some, I guess, unmendable materials by hand. I don't know. Yeah.
By hand, definitely.
Yeah, because I'm thinking it might be quite difficult to stitch up like PVC or
It is.
Yeah.
But we do have friends who are in the industry who deals with who have the machinery to do it. So we usually just refer them to our friends.
Nice. We love the ecosystem.
I mean, try to say no to as few people as possible.
Yeah. The work that Nana and Fahmi do at Fin is incredible and amazing. From how they started the company and the business to how it's evolved to be today and still remains small and humble and grounded, they have managed to gather a community of sentimental and thoughtful clothing wearers. And isn't that what we need in the current state of an Anthropocene as we seek solutions at the intersection of respect and the injustices of the fashion industry? Wear and tear in clothing is inevitable. It happens when we come into contact with other surfaces and engage in repeated patterns and habits of movement in our daily routines. Maybe instead of beating ourselves up for spilling red wine on our white t-shirts or accidentally burning a hole in our skirts or wearing out our denim jeans because we simply wear them too often, we should embrace the imperfections that come with ongoing wear. There are many wonderful resources out there that teaches us how to get rid of stains, practice simple mending techniques, and even to upcycle our unwanted clothing pieces into blankets, quilts, and cushion covers. If being hands on isn't for you, try outsourcing these services to designers like Nana and Fami, people who are experts at giving your worn garments a new lease of life. Platforms like Alt Native, a local service provider, helps recycle old pieces into something new to wear again. New used with open and close inverted commas. Fashion Fidelity recently shared a really helpful post on Instagram that compiles a list of mending YouTubers and podcasters to watch and listen to. Fashion Fidelity is founded by Naja On, who is a guest in our previous episode of the podcast. So be sure to listen to that if you haven't already. Other digital platforms like Fixing Fashion provides a series of tutorials on how to repair and upgrade garments. Another resource I find useful is a book titled Love Clothes Last, written by co-founder of the Global Fashion Revolution movement, Ursula de Castro. This is also a book that I own, so if you're interested in reading it, please also hit me up. So, in her book, she breaks down various mending processes and why it is important to care for the clothes we love. She describes the importance of mending our relationship with our clothes and that we need to start looking for committed relationships with them, bonds that will last for a lifetime of wear and tear. A slightly overlooked act of care for our clothing is laundering. It is often neglected for its significance in ensuring that materials are not expended beyond their properties. Shoving a laundry basket full of load into the washing machine is convenient and time efficient, which is why we do it. But paying attention to care labels of individual garments that we own requires patience, attentiveness, and extra dedication. Hence, it is something which not everyone is great at doing, myself included. I am still in the process of understanding and recognizing individual care symbols and reminding myself to take better care of how my clothes are being washed. Growing old with our clothes is a natural process of living life. Like people, we fall in and out of love for our clothing too, and that's okay. Our bodies change as our styles and preferences change with time and experience. And in fact, we should be outgrowing our items from time to time, but with slightly more thought put into its afterlife. Because we are in control of how we choose to retire them responsibly or if we choose to give them a new lease of life. Whether you choose to outsource or DIY your mending and repairing, these are fashion habits that have been practiced since forever, but overlooked by modern day conveniences. Mending isn't the be all and end all to the faults of the fashion industry, but it does, I think, heal personal relationships that we as clothing wearers have with our clothes and with ourselves. And for that reason, maybe growing old with our clothes isn't that bad. So thank you so much for listening to this episode and for watching us if you are. And I'll see you again next time. Bye.